Check, 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 check. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to Spilt Milk. I am the host, Philip Rankin, and I am really excited about doing this podcast. When I was 18, I was living in Costa Mesa in Orange County, where I had moved after high school to straighten out my life by way of a 28-day trip to Tucson, Arizona. I didn't really know too many people, so I spent a lot of my time driving around. Many people think of Orange County, aka the Orange Curtain, as a rather boring or mundane place. It is a land of Disney, congested freeways, and McMansions. But for me, growing up in the fairly insular community of the South Bay, which are the beach cities south of LAX, this was a wide open frontier. All of the beaches were new, and every boulevard had a different story to tell. I was a sponge soaking in the new environment. This was also the time I started tuning into public radio. I was listening to a lot of KPFK, KPCC, KCRW. These stations really opened a new world to me. I don't really remember why I started tuning in. At the time, I was driving a green 1996 Ford Taurus station wagon that was faintly ovoid and had a fairly temperamental tape deck in it. So I spent a lot of time listening to the radio. I probably stumbled onto public radio because I would use a scan button to find new stations. Either because I was in a new area or more likely because I was sick and tired of hearing the same crap on the classic rock stations over and over again. But something must have caught my attention because I kept tuning in. Initially, I was listening for the news. This was late 2001, 2002, and our country had just been attacked. We were in the run-up to the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, and as heinous as the attacks were in our country on September 11th, the wars that we were beginning to fight just didn't seem to make sense to me. So the radio stations I was listening to offered a point of view that seemed to help explain the cognitive dissonance that I was experiencing. But I was also hearing the stories on public radio, the short stories of Morning Edition and All Things Considered, and more of the long-form programming of This American Life. I had a lot of driveway moments, drive-through meals, just so I can continue listening to the programming. So now jump forward 13 years, and I'm still a radio junkie. Recently, I became mildly obsessed with Mark Maron's podcast, WTF. I work as a delivery driver and have been listening to his interviews for 2 days straight while out on deliveries. And as I was driving around listening to these interviews, I had a moment of inspiration. I said, I want to do that. The thing I love about Mark's interviews is that even though he is mainly interviewing comedians and actors, they talk about so much more than just comedy and acting. They really go into the people's lives and kind of cover all aspects of them. So this got me interested in interviewing the people I know. I'm extremely privileged to know so many talented musicians and very interesting people. Every person's life is a story, so I really want a chance to hear it from them and, get a chance to document them telling their own story so everybody can hear it. I moved to Valencia. I moved to Valencia, where CalArts is located, the July before school started. Me and my roommates had been kicked out of our old apartment in Hawthorne for throwing a wild party. So I had to move up to Valencia a little sooner than I would have liked to. If you've ever been to Valencia in the summertime or the Santa Clarita Valley, you know that hot is an understatement. It's more like you're being under attack by sun rays yielding steak knives. So needless to say, I spent the majority of my time at CalArts, where they have 24-hour air conditioning. During the summer, most of the students are not around, so I spent a lot of time practicing, hiding out in the library where I could just listen to the CDs and browse the stacks, and for me, I was kind of in nerd heaven, so that was very exciting. But so one day, anyways, I'm passing through the music building, and I heard a band rehearsing in one of the classrooms. So I poked my head in, wanted to see what was going on, and I started hearing these sinuous melodies coming from tenor sax, and they were kind of like dancing around the pitch. And I come to find out the saxophone player's name is John Armstrong. And he was rehearsing with his band. It's a collective ensemble called Slumgum. So this was the first time I heard John, but it definitely wouldn't be the last, especially my first year at Cal Arts when we were students there together. I pretty much looked out for him playing and was at every performance. Whether he was playing with Slumgum or in this incredibly crazy party band called Oliver's Pleasure Circus, or he was always playing in a lot of really interesting improvised settings. But whatever was going on, his playing always seemed to just fit just right in. It was extremely virtuosic, but never had too many notes, and you could always tell whenever he was playing, his ears were just wide open. And so, again, that's why his playing just fits so well. But I also started seeing him turn up in all sorts of different unexpected places. I saw him play guitar in a dub band. He was playing electric bass in Vinnie Golia's sextet. So I was like, obviously there's a lot to know about this guy. So when I decided to do this show, John's name was absolutely at the top of my list. As I said, I've always admired his playing, and I'm really excited to share this with you. This is the first part of a two-part interview, so I hope you enjoy. You grew up in Washington, right?
I was actually born in Corvallis, Oregon.
Okay. I know where that is.
You do?
Yeah.
Have you been there?
I passed through, I think, because I went to this other place called Lebanon.
You've been to Lebanon, yes.
Because when I got sober, my sponsor was this guy a couple years older than me. Uh-huh. And he lived in Orange County, and him and his friends, when like they were 15 or 16, no, 15, before they got their license, stole a car and just drove it all the way up to Oregon until they got to Lebanon and got arrested, and like we're just like terrorizing the town.
Oh my god!
So he said,
in what way they were just like?
I don't know, just being drunk and
stop signs.
I don't even know what they were doing, but he was like, you know, AA. The steps are all about like making amends. Okay. Like, you know, you have to admit you're powerless, then you have to make amends to all the people that you harmed throughout your life. And so he was thinking about it. He's like, I owe this town an amends. Like, I don't know how you apologize to a town, but he's like,
he just wrecked it.
He was just like, I need to go there. So he rented a car, and I went with him and his girlfriend to Lebanon, Oregon.
Oh my god!
Yeah,
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And what did he do?
And so, well, we went to an AA meeting there, and then there was some guy who was like part of the police department, and it was like, I guess he somehow made it okay by just kind of going there, and you know, because the city didn't. I mean, like, it was just some kids, but he felt like he needed to go there, and that was a great excuse for me to go to Oregon. I was like, yeah, that'll be awesome. Let's go to Oregon.
It's pretty in that neck of the woods too, in the valley.
Yeah, and Corvallis is not too far, right?
It's very close to the
yeah.
Wow, that's an amazing story. That's beautiful. That's really incredible.
It's crazy though, right?
Yeah, that is wild.
So you were born in Corvallis?
I was born in Corvallis. My dad... Yeah, because my dad moved to Oregon to be a lumberjack.
Really?
In the 1970s. No shit. In Sweet Home, Oregon.
Where is he from? I'm going to close the door because of the camera. Where was he living?
My dad grew up in a lot of different places. I think he moved around a lot, but he mostly spent time in Missouri.
Yeah.
And then in Springfield, Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
And then he went to school in New Mexico for a little while, and then kind of went around, did some stuff.
Yeah.
And he ended up in Sweet Home, Oregon, doing logging.
Wow.
And then he, as he tells it, he was outside in like sideways freezing rain.
Mm-hmm.
He'd had a couple like near-death experience. I mean, it's a hard gig.
Yeah,
dude,
yeah.
logging in the 70s, and it was like sideways rain. He's like pulling up some tree, or he's like scratched up, and he's like, "I think an inside job sounds great, an indoor job." So he went to Oregon State University, which is in Corvallis, and he met my mom there, and so that's where me and my sister were born.
Huh. While was your mom was it after they graduated college? And
Yeah, my mom had gone to school for, what do you call it? Special education. She got a master's in special education.
Wow.
So she was teaching special ed in Portland for a while. I actually can't remember how she ended up in Corvallis. I don't remember.
It's
that.
not too far from Portland, right?
It's not. It's just a few hours.
Yeah.
A couple hour drive. We were raised in Corvallis, and when I was 12, before I got to 6th grade, we moved to Battleground, Washington, which is a very small town in southwest Washington State.
Such great names.
It's great.
Yeah, Sweet Home,
Oregon.
Sweet Home, or Battleground,
Lebanon.
Washington,
Lebanon. Battleground's funny. There's a plaque. There's like a giant wooden sign that explains why it's called Battleground, and it's a bizarre story where there was like the Fort Vancouver, because Vancouver, Washington is close to that. That's where like a lot of the settlers were living, and then there was a Native American tribe that was led by a man named Chief Umtuck. And Captain Strong was sort of a captain of some brigade in this fort, and everyone was like restless. They were like, "Oh, there's going to be a war. There's going to be a battle. There's going to be something strong." But Captain Strong and Chief Umtuck, they were both committed to peace.
Yeah.
And so they would get mocked by their constituency.
Huh? Yeah, because they wanted to fight.
Exactly. So they called Captain Strong a coward. And Battleground, there was never a battle. It just comes from like basically a sarcastic dig at Captain Strong. Yeah, they called that area because that's where the Native Americans were, and they were like, "Captain Strong, you better go there and take care of stuff, or else they're going to come and kick our butts and all this sort of stuff and kill us and take our women and all these sorts of like ridiculous hysteria and rhetoric." And Captain Strong was like, no, peace, and they were like, "Okay, yeah, Captain Strong's Battleground." They were like mocking the guy.
Wow.
Yeah, so it ended up as Battleground.
And so it's just you and a younger sister? Or
My sister is older. She's
How old is she?
Years older. She's 2.5 years older.
2.5 years older? Okay. Cool. And does she still live in the area?
She doesn't. She just moved to Chicago. She went to school at USC, got a philosophy degree, and then she ended up getting a law degree at the University of Pacific in Sacramento.
Okay.
So just the two of us, yeah, we were raised in Battleground for the most part. That's where I went to middle school and high school.
Cool. Wow. So what was it like? What was the, so your mom was a special ed teacher, and then what was your dad doing? What was his inside job?
His inside job, this is a funny phrase. His inside job was, I think he started off working for like wood factories. What would you call it? Like logging, like log mills.
Yeah.
Mills.
Yeah, mills.
And then he started working for a company called Applied Theory. As he tells it, this is super relevant to us. He had a kid in his early 30s, my sister.
Yeah.
And he didn't really have a job. He was teaching part-time at Oregon State University. He was teaching some computer science in the 80s, or like in 1980. That's when my sister was born. And then he was teaching I think he had a forestry degree. He was teaching computer science. He might have been teaching a couple of the classes. Adjunct, part-time teaching. And his mother-in-law, who, bless her soul, was a severe woman, was coming out to see my sister.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Oh, I better get a job." So he found this job at a company called Applied Theory that did work with logging. And,
somehow, just like logistics.
No, they would process the lumber and
okay.
turn it into paper and wood. And
that's just a weird
right.
name for a mill.
Applied
Theory, like
that's what it was called. Logistics. It does sound like a logistics company. Like you just hire Applied Theory and they come in.
Yeah, or they're like they could be the ones that like get the wood places.
Totally. Yeah, it does sound like one of those like UPS type things.
Yeah, or like strategic strategy. I don't know. Like global strategic positioning. I don't know.
One of these bland, nonsense combination of words. Applied theory.
Yeah. That could be to anything.
Applied theory. My mom could have taught special ed for applied theory.
Yeah.
We could be teaching, through applied theory.
So then that was like his gig?
Yeah, then he was doing like sales somehow involved with the parts that it takes to process lumber or something. I'm actually not entirely sure. But that job moved to Southern Washington State, which is why we moved.
Okay.
And he's since done a couple different jobs, and now he's working in the construction world, selling equipment that makes like construction blocks,
like cinder blocks.
Yeah, stuff like that. Yeah, different types.
I always think that stuff's like just like the stuff that makes stuff, or like just. I don't know. I've been listening a lot to this radio show called 99% Invisible.
Okay.
And they talk all about like just design stuff. Like I listened to a thing today on the radio that was all about what was it? About the people. God, what do they call them? Environmental graphic designers. I think they call them way people, waymen. But they're the people who get you to like know how to get somewhere. Like they make the signs. They do all the architectural designs.
Way people.
Yeah, way people. I forgot the exact name.
We're going to go with way people.
Yeah, way people. The way people. I'll talk to the way man.
Yeah. Like as if they live in the woods.
Yeah, right? Yeah, it sounds like a
come out, make a little sign and go back and you never hear from them.
Well, part of it was because he wanted to talk about people who have extreme effects on our lives but are never...
99% invisible. I see that's sort of the
like
gist.
You would never know this guy exists. But anyway, so that's, I don't know, but like it's just interesting, I guess, since we don't like what they might think of as mundane or like starts to seem really interesting, just like stuff that makes stuff or like things that, I don't know, but you get what I'm saying.
No, totally. I worked at a diaper factory.
Really?
For a while, and there was like 3 lines. Yeah, exactly. There was 3 lines that made diapers, and the machines were, God, I'm going to try not to exaggerate, but the machines were like 20 yards long.
Yeah.
It was insane. Like, because if you think about a diaper, you have like the whatever adhesive, be it Velcro or tape or whatever that you have to get the thing on, and then there's the absorbent thing, and then there's the cover to the absorbent thing, and then there's the stretchy stuff, and there's like all these little things you would never think of as just a diaper.
Yeah.
And so if you could imagine it was like the absorbent thing comes from one line, it gets fed into this 20-yard long machine, and then the stretchy stuff comes in on one, and then the plastic comes in on one, and they all kind of like converge, and they do this amazing dance where they all get assembled and then put together, and then put in rows, and then put it in a package, and then it ends up to us.
Yeah.
So that's all pre-person.
Yeah. What were you doing?
I was doing a couple things. Mostly, so someone would take it. I would do this sometimes. You grab 4, and they come down, and then they go, this little machine cinches the bags.
Yeah.
They're open bags, like, and they go, and you take 4 of those packages, and you put them in a box, and you close it, and you send it, and this machine, a machine tapes it.
Wow.
But what I was doing is taking those boxes and stacking them on pallets, which was on a big rotating disc, and with a giant saran wrap thing that was on a like hydraulic lift that would move it up and down. So you push a button, first you tuck the saran wrap into one box, you push the button and the thing would roll as the saran wrap hydraulic would go up and down, and it would wrap this giant pallet of diapers. You get a hand truck and you move it and it gets shipped. Not before you put on a Sharpie, you write the number of how many you did that day with Sharpie. But the best thing, well, first of all, the machine, the 20-yard machine, you would have to do sweeping. If the lines were down, you would just start sweeping, and I would often sweep, and I'd just go back there and just look at this magnificent thing. It made fucking like cheap bargain basement, low shelf diapers.
Yeah.
Like nonsense diapers.
Yeah, it was like 99-cent store.
Totally.
Yeah.
I think one of them was called Quackers, and it was like a little duck in a diaper. It was like that kind of nonsense. It was like garbage stuff, and it was all the same material, of course. And it's like, oh, this time it's Quackers, and this time it's like Little Bums or whatever they're called. But these machines, they were amazing. They were in plexiglass, and the sounds and the rhythms that they would make. I'm totally with you.
Yeah. Well,
making a machine to make something, that's really fascinating.
Wow. I know, gotta love the odd jobs, man.
Boy, they help. Dude, they help. Everything, man. Like when, I mean, you and me, we make things that people pay for. You know, be it lessons, be it teaching, be it food, be it, you know, professional music. So like I release an album and I'm like, please pay me $15 for these 6 or 5 songs. Yeah. Right. For this 50 minutes of life. Be a little 50-minute experience. Give me $15 for that. Like, it's different when that's 2 hours of Diaper Factory. Yeah. As opposed to like a 10 and a 5. Like, it just changes everything. And then it was 12-hour shifts. Like 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. You would do that for 2 weeks. It's 4 days on, 4 days off. 2 weeks of that. And then 2 weeks of the shift. So you go from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. to 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. You just go back and forth.
Really?
Yeah.
That's brutal, man.
Awful.
Was this in Washington?
This was in Washington State. It was in Vancouver, Washington, just on the Columbia River.
Jeez. And did they have like? I mean, I'm guessing Washington's working laws are much different than California's laws, right? Huh. Like 12. I mean, you were probably getting overtime, right?
They are so smart because it's 4 on, 4 off.
Oh, they did that bullshit where they would be like, "Oh, well, technically
a week." Exactly. Like they force you to live in an 8-day week. Yeah. But then they rely on the 7-day week to not give you that much overtime. Yeah. It was very rare. The science was perfect on their end. It was very rare that you would ever get overtime. Wow. 48 hours. You work 48 hours in 4 days.
But sometimes they would be...
They're smart. I mean, you know, they know what they're doing.
Yeah. So, let's see. So you're living in Battleground, Washington. You moved there when you're like 11, 12?
Yeah, something like that.
You and your sister, what were you, like... You seem like you were playing a lot of sports, right?
I love sports. I played a lot of baseball and Corvallis, like Little League stuff.
Yeah, elementary school was a time for Little League, right?
It's the best. It's the best.
It's like hanging out at the field... Like eating those terrible burgers from the stands and like the crazy parents and hanging out in the dugout, sunflower seeds, man.
The best. In fact, in Corvallis, and this is funny. In Corvallis, the parents were brutal. Yeah. College town, I have no idea why. They were like yelling. There was one. So we burned through in 3rd grade. I still remember this. We burned through like maybe 3 coaches in a season. Wow. Because the parents were so relentless. And there was one game where the 2 coaches started cussing at each other and yelling and swearing, and then the ump got involved, and everyone just started cussing and swearing. The parents were yelling; it was like nuts. And this was a normal thing during a game. Parents would yell at the ump. It was nuts, man. Yeah. Corvallis was like cutthroat. Everything that you've heard about, like awful parents. Yeah. And at some point, our coach bailed. He just left.
He just left the game?
So mad. Exactly. Like 3rd graders. Could you imagine? Yeah. Like being so mad at Plaza. You're like, you guys teach yourself. Like, get out of here. Like, I can't rectify that. It's like insane.
And the kids aren't even doing anything. It's not like the kids.
Exactly. Yeah, we weren't being. I guess we're being 3rd graders or whatever.
Well, but you're like, what, 30? You're 32?
31, yeah.
31. Yeah, we're the same age. So we were like, that was like the thing in the 90s. Was like the like raging baseball parents. Like they would show it on Current Affair or whatever.
Totally fights between dads in the stands.
Yeah, like that happened in my Little League. Like that wasn't just
really.
It was just everywhere. Yeah, my dad would yell at the coach. My dad was coaching. The umpires were crazy. They'd give the umpires a hard time. The umpire would like leave.
Yeah, that happened now. My dad actually came down to replace the home ump because he split at one game. Yeah, you're right. That's right. It was a thing.
Yeah, it was a 90s thing.
Epidemic.
Yeah.
I wonder where that's moved to. Soccer or something.
Soccer. I wonder. I don't know, because it's like our lifestyles are so different than like our parents were. Like we're not living in the suburbs. It's like a total like kids in the city is so different than the kids.
And it's more that we see with our students. Like it's more that parents are just filling up their kids' schedule, like in a similar way that our schedule is filled. Like they have this. They have like a very regimented week. Yeah.
Well, so you played a lot of baseball.
Yeah. So when we moved to Battleground, I started playing Little League again, and there was a game. My dad remembers this. It's more of my dad's experience because he was in the stands during the craziness of Corvallis. So we go to Battleground, And he said the parents were just nicer and everyone was friendly and they were just hanging out. It's like Battleground's an interesting community with just lovely people. I wouldn't really be considered a suburb at the time. It's kind of turned into that. Yeah. It was north and east of Vancouver, Washington.
Yeah, that's across the Columbia River
exactly.
from Portland.
Exactly. So exactly, Vancouver, Washington is where the very first city you get to when you cross the river from Oregon to Washington State. So Battleground was like kind of its own little thing. It had some dairy. What would you call it? Industry. So there was jobs in the dairy. There was like a lot of farms out there. It was more of like a rural town. And when we moved there, it was just when it was starting to turn into a suburb. Yeah. They put in a Safeway. That was like the big, like the Vaughn. It's the Vaughns of Washington State. And that was like a big, like, oh my God, there's a Safeway now. And then since then, they've built towards Vancouver, Washington. Yeah. They've been building south.
Yeah,
like,
just like
tons of open land.
Just like what happened, like Riverside, Orange County.
Or Valencia.
Yeah, right? Valencia.
Valencia was just like pastures. Or Burbank, if you go back far enough. Yeah. Apparently Burbank was just orange groves.
Well, yeah, Los Angeles, I mean, there were oranges everywhere. You know, like, I remember I talked to Putter, you know, because he grew up in Bell. And he said, where's that? Bell is...
No, I just pictured it in my head.
And he said you could drive from Bell to Long Beach and just be like in oranges the whole time.
And now it's...
Yeah, now it's just...
parking lots.
Yeah.
I'll be damned.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that Battleground's that same story. But we go to... we're playing a game, and some kid hits just a monster shot. And it's either his mom or the mom that stands up and screams is on that kid's team. And she was like, wow, what a great hit! And she stands up and she's cheering, and one kid on our team like makes this crazy leaping catch in left field. And she goes, wow! My dad said, she went, good job, everybody! Right? So
whoa, man!
Yeah. He was like, we're not in Corvallis anymore.
Yeah, right?
Insane.
Good job, everybody.
Good job, everybody.
And then were you like doing football, soccer?
I didn't do football in high school. I did tennis. I did some baseball. I stopped when I got to high school. Yeah. I did a lot of basketball in high school, but not for the high school team, for like a community league, right? I basically, when I became a freshman in high school, like the decision had been made. Yeah. It was like, really, honestly, I see it all the time in students that I teach. It's sports or music. Yeah. And they're really, you have to choose because they're at the same time after school. You just don't have that much time to practice if you're going to do sports. Yeah. So I did like tennis. I could just get by without trying, just hanging out on the JV team. And, you know, getting some exercise. That CEP, like the community basketball league, same thing. I got to play a lot of basketball, which was fun, but it was all weekend stuff, and it was cool. And music took precedence, so I would miss a tournament to play like a jazz festival. Yeah. And that would not be okay if I was playing.
Yeah, of course.
For Battleground. So I made my decision early. They wanted me to play football because I was a large boy, but it just didn't. Man, it was like, I don't even know what it was. Like, I don't think I had principles. It wasn't like, I have to, you know, I'm going to be a musician. Yeah. It was like obvious.
Yeah. What was your first instrument?
Piano.
Piano.
With this like church pianist that lived down the street, and that was great because it teaches you notes. Yeah. So that's when I first learned how to read notes.
How old were you?
It was right when I moved to Battleground. I didn't do any music in Corvallis.
Were you and your sister?
My sister actually did violin. My parents never played a note. Yeah. We didn't really even listen to very much music growing up. Like when I think of what my mom loved Emmylou Harris and Enya. So like, but not all the time. Like we'd be driving around in Corvallis and she'd have an Enya tape. So
it was a Celeste.
I don't even know.
No, there was that thing in the 90s, the compilation you can buy. Celestial Sounds. Or like, it had Enya, it had like the X-Files theme.
I see what you mean.
Yeah,
Tubular Bells.
Yeah, Tubular Bells.
Stuff like this.
Yes, yeah. Well, I forgot what it was called, but anyways.
Minor keys and like pretty
synths, new age stuff.
Yeah, new age.
So your mom was into that, and your sister?
I mean, my sister played a little bit of violin when I was a kid. I definitely remember at some point I went to my sister's violin recital, and I was just blown away. Yeah. Perhaps like most 8-year-olds with me or 9-year-olds. They were just like, oh my God, there was like 20 kids playing Turkey in the Straw. And I would just like, I would hold my sister's violin music like it was sacred. I would just look at it and I would think how cool and complicated it looked, like kids' melodies. And at some point, my parents got an old upright piano. And so I would sit at the piano a lot and just plunk around.
Yeah.
And I used to write, I used to like know that I was going to be in a rock band. So I would write, like I had a stack of songs that I wrote with lyrics. Yeah, and we had
like notated them out, or just wrote the words and like chords.
The words, I didn't know any chords, but we had a guitar. I still remember this. We got my dad's guitar out of storage in Corvallis, and I'm in his truck, and I was like, "Oh, can I hold the guitar on the way home?" Okay, yeah. So I hold the guitar, and there was something about it. I held the guitar, and I just knew I was great. I just knew that I was a great guitar player, and I didn't know like what I was about to do, but I knew it was going to sound like amazing.
Yeah,
like I was 10 or whatever, and honestly, in that moment, if I just started playing like this, like you know, some brilliant flamenco like classical piece, I wouldn't have been shocked. I'd been like, "Yep."
You're like this is it. This is my calling.
Exactly. But then I didn't do any. I was like, whatever 10-year-old does with the guitar. But I used to sit in my living room and tune all the notes till they sounded the same, and I would just play like open strings. And thinking about it now, what I think I did is I tuned like the bottom 3 notes to like one note, and then probably the top 3 to like an octave, because it's like I would just sit there for a long time till it all sounded right. And I would just strum all night. And I would just love it. I'd just go around the instrument and just play and play and play. But I used to like do stuff like that, just strumming. And I would write like my own version of notation, so I knew how the strum pattern would go to my rock songs.
Yeah, it's just like down, down, up, up,
exactly.
up, down.
And it was like a series of like ones, like vertical dashes, and then like half as long for short ones, I guess, and then even shorter for like really fast ones. So maybe like a quarter note would be like half an inch vertical line, and then a eighth note would be like a quarter of an inch, right? Like stuff like that. And I would draw like these complicated. I was kind of like OCD as a kid. Like I really like I had to make it meticulous and right, and I just had this stack of songs that I would like know that when I joined the band, it'd be like, "Here's all my songs, guys."
If you look at it like, what is this crap?
I wish I'd kept it. If I was a genius, I would have kept it.
Yeah.
It's like, what was I even writing about? I think you know what it is. It's like when kids write songs, it's like you hear all these stuff on the radio and you know it's about pain and loss. And I'm just trying to remember my band name. It was pathetic.
It was a band name with nobody in the band?
No one's in the band. No one's in this band. Innocent Pleasures or something. Like something like that.
Oh,
yeah. At some point I thought it was going to be ferret with a PH. Biggest band in the world.
I remember my friends had like a garage band, and I think the name that they finally settled on when we were in like 6th grade, I think one of them was the 4 Death Pigeons.
The 4 Death or Dead Pigeons?
Death! Like think of like Ghost Rider, but like pigeons.
Son of a bitch. Yeah. There was 4 of them.
Yeah,
and
well,
they were the 4 death pigeons.
Yeah, or like the death pigeons are. I
mean, that makes sense because death's not going to also do pigeons. There's probably a pigeon who's the death pigeon. It goes around to like it's your time.
It's like the 4 horsemen of the 4 death pigeons.
The 4 of the apocalypse.
So you were doing that before you started taking piano lessons?
Yeah, I didn't know any music.
So
I just knew I was a great musician. I did. I was like I would actually have fantasies of playing saxophone solos before.
Really?
I ever knew that we even had sax. Like, I just like my friend, a kid from Israel named Yoed Anus, Anus. Right? We didn't know enough to make fun of him at the time. He played saxophone. That's all I knew in 4th grade or 5th grade or something. I was like, oh, Yoed plays saxophone. That's the coolest instrument ever. I'm going to play that instrument. So I knew I was going to play saxophone at a young age, and I like wrote all these weird rock songs about love. You don't know anything at the time. But yeah, and I would just plunk around on the piano. But then when I moved to Battleground, then I found out that my dad had a saxophone in the garage.
Really?
Because both he and my mom converted to this Buddhism called Soka Gakkai International. At the time.
SGI.
SGI.
Right?
And at the time it was called Nichiren Shoshu Association, which is NSA. So they changed it. That's all I knew of NSA.
Yeah, you told me. So when did they do that?
They did it before me and my sister were born, so in the 70s, and in fact met at a Buddhist wedding. Buddhist meeting in like Corvallis or Eugene or something, and they got heavy into it.
Yeah. You said they were missionaries. They consider themselves
kind of not. I wouldn't go that far.
Or proselytizers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The NSA at the time was a very intense evangelical organization. So my mom would go door to door. That was common. People would go door to door. It was just like really intense stuff, like real intense faith. And both of my parents, my mom was raised severely Catholic. Severely Catholic. She was raised like Roman Catholic. Her mom came from Italy on the boat. And the whole thing. So that was an intense experience for her going to Catholic school in New Jersey. And so and that just like was very hard on her.
Where was she from in New Jersey?
She grew up in Longport, on the beach. It's like on the shore.
South Jersey.
South Jersey shore, exactly. But she was born in Cleveland. So when she came out west, it was like, oh wow, the West Coast is amazing. Like people don't yell at you all the time. And then she started teaching special ed. And at some point, over the course of several interactions with some woman, she got what they call shakabuku. She like accepted. That's like the word.
What a great word!
Shakabuku.
Shakabuku. It
is a good
word. That's like the verb, right? She got shakabuku'd.
Yeah, it's a verb. You shakabuku people.
Yeah.
You get shakabuku'd. You're right. Yeah, we use it as a verb. That's so funny. I never thought about how great that word is.
It's like, it sounds like. Anyways, it's a great word.
Shakabuku. It's fun to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, then my dad got converted too in Sweet Home when he was logging. He got converted, so they both got it. It was really good for my dad as well. He says he was listless for a while, just sort of going from thing to thing, nothing like really concrete. And the big part of the practice is you chant, so it's something active.
Yeah,
like it's not quite meditation. In fact, it's not meditation. Yeah. It's almost like the modern equivalent would be The Secret, right? This whole this phenomenon.
Yeah.
Like like thoughts are things. You visualize something and it happens, right? And like they kind of go off in the whole like quantum physics. Like, if you actually think it, it's like manifest in the world. And they, the SGI doesn't do that, but that's how they talk. They talk like you chant for something, material things.
It's like one chant.
It's Nam Myoho Renge Kyo.
Yeah.
Chant. Yeah.
So it's like that's the whole. Everything's based around that one chant.
The theory is, so the SGI, so it's like Buddhism is normally associated with like cleansing of the self and simplifying your life and like getting rid of all these tendrils that are like attached to us based on just real life, right?
Yeah.
So like the original Buddha, for instance, that's what he was preaching. It's like, and he was preaching something that exists outside of an organized religion, because technically Sakyamuni Buddha was Hindu, right? It's like a practicing Hindu, and then he went around, saw all this pain and suffering in the real world, and he tried his hand at, I think it's called asceticism, which is when you torture yourself in order to obtain like this higher consciousness.
I saw the movie with Keanu Reeves.
I have not seen it. I should see Little Buddha.
That's it's great.
Right? Little Buddha?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, it's great. Keanu Reeves is the Buddha. It's great.
He did well. Name one other actor that could have pulled that off.
I can't name
like
one.
Harvey Keitel, like fucking shit. Yeah. I mean, like the great actors of that generation. Al Pacino, no, it had to be Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, well, because he's like just, hey,
and he's also not probably. I don't know anything about him. He actually sounds like an amazing guy. He like donates a lot of his.
Yeah, I've read all about it. He's like, he takes the bus places.
Yeah,
and like
he's like not too self-conscious to take that role. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If he was a little bit more self-conscious, like, I don't want to play the Buddha. That's a pretty intense thing to do. He's like, I'll play it.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what the Buddha would say.
Yeah, right?
Who cares? It's just the Buddha. It's just some dude.
Yeah. That's interesting. I never thought about it like that. So let's, so you're taking piano lessons. When does like saxophone and...
So it's actually all comes back to Buddhism. Because my dad, when he was living in Corvallis... marched. So you just did.
Yeah,
everything.
he had a saxophone.
He had a tenor saxophone because he marched in a parade. The SGI, the NSA at the time, loved like parades and brass bands, and that was really all part of. Because quickly the whole NSA is based on a priest from Japan during feudal Japanese times. That was a radical priest, a total asshole, but like a really brilliant man that lived in the time of Shintoism, which was being used by the government to oppress their people. Yeah. So if you could imagine, Buddhism could be used to oppress people. Like something beautiful about that is any religion could be used to oppress people. In fact, Buddhism, they were like, at the time, they were like, just pray to this one Buddha your whole life, and then you'll experience all your joy after you die. So he was able, like, okay, we'll just farm and do all your stuff for you. So he was like, no, people can obtain enlightenment in their own time, and you chant this Nam-myoho Renge Kyo because that's the title of the Lotus Sutra, which is the last teaching of the Buddha. And it's a beautiful book. The Lotus Sutra is an amazing book, and it's based on the last speech that Buddha gave before he died. So if you just chant the title, Nam meaning devotion to Myoho Renge Kyo, which is like the title of the Lotus Sutra, then you obtain the wisdom of it. And so he devised this practice in the time. The point of all that is modern day Buddhism is wrapped up in Japanese culture. I'm sorry, modern day NSA Buddhism, SGI Buddhism, was wrapped up in Japanese culture, which involves brass bands and marching and like big, really well rehearsed marching in line, like amazing music. And so my dad just picked up the tenor, learned enough notes to march. Wow. And he had some like old beat up tenor saxophone in the garage because of that. And his brother, my Uncle Lou, who was deaf, actually played snare drum apparently in that.
Really?
Yeah. Or bass drum. I think it might
Your
be
uncle's
bass
deaf?
drum. My uncle is deaf from birth.
Do you speak some?
I don't. Yeah. He lives now in Las Vegas. He used to live in Maine and in Nebraska before that. I learned the alphabet when I was younger. I only saw him about once a year, once every 2 years. He did live in Corvallis when I was very young, though. He moved there with his family. He has 3 kids. But no, I don't speak sign language.
Well, so was there a point where you're just like, let's get the saxophone out?
I moved to Battleground. The first 2 friends I make were in band. Jamie Henderson and Ryan Cody. Played tenor saxophone and trumpet, respectively. Yeah. And they were like good people. I was like, whoa, okay, band. I went to my dad. I was like, oh, I want to play saxophone. He's like, well, here. And he just gave me the saxophone. I remember I took it out for the first time. I was just blowing. Same thing with the guitar. I'm like, I'm great at this. Like that, right? Yeah. But then they got me lessons at the local hardware store. I had like a little music shop.
The hardware?
High school pharmacy. It was like hardware pharmacy. Yeah. And they had like a little music shop on the side that eventually became a store. And I started taking lessons with, what was his name? I can't remember his name. Yeah. That I took from a couple people just growing up. And I knew how to read music because of my piano experience. But the most important thing was actually through the SGI, there was a jazz band and a brass band in Portland, Oregon.
Huh. So you went to Portland.
So there was this. So yeah, and Battleground was like a 30, 40-minute drive from Portland, Oregon. So I would go to Portland with my mom to play in their brass band and their jazz band. And that's how I learned to solo. That's how I learned to be in a brass band. And when I was 16, a guy named Harry Tolliver, who's to this day one of the most important people in my life, he was the brass band leader in Portland, Oregon. And we were like a small group, but he was this amazing guy from San Francisco, super high energy, brilliant dude. He would have study groups. Yeah. And I just loved him. I was just an amazing mentor. As a human being, he was just an older dude. He was like, I can't remember now. He might have been in his 20s at that point. He had his own apartment in Portland. I was like, oh, this guy's amazing. He played saxophone. He was super energetic. And when he left, he had to move down to California. He put me in charge of the Portland Brass Band.
Oh, wow.
Which was a big deal to me. And I was 16 at that point. I had my license. Yeah. So for the next 3 years of high school, every Sunday morning, I would like drive all over Portland to pick people up in my Chevy Lumina and take them to the Portland Kaikon, which is the church, basically, the community center, and rehearse. Wow. I had to rehearse a band like at 16.
So you drive around and pick your band up.
Yeah. And some of them couldn't get rides. Yeah. And then rehearse music. But then also I learned how to write music because there was times where I didn't have any music to rehearse. So I just started writing music for the band. So like, in fact, Harry started me on that. He was like, some tune on the radio. He's like, I want to play in the band, so go write it down.
Really?
And he didn't tell me there's a thing called transcription.
Yeah.
You have to do this and this and this, and here are the notes on the page, and here you do it. I just like found some staff paper, and I just listened to. It was the Puff Daddy version of Kashmir.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
For the original Godzilla movie.
Oh god, yeah.
What was it called?
It doesn't matter. It was terrible.
Godzilla or whatever.
Yeah,
it was like fucking song. He really wanted to play that with the band, so I transcribed Kashmir. I just figured out how to do it.
Did you do it with the guitar or the piano?
With the piano, both. Yeah, I just figured it out. And I wrote out parts for people, and God knows what those parts look like. But that was the first time I was like, "Oh, you just do it." And then I did like a few other things.
Yeah, so then there was never like this thing telling you that you can't do it.
Exactly.
And nobody ever said, "Gosh, this is so hard."
Or no one even was like, "Wow, that's amazing!
Huh.
Like, I can't believe you brought in this awful chart to like, you even tried." Good Lord. It was just like, "Oh, you just do it." Like no one knew.
Yeah.
He didn't even know. Harry was like, "Okay, cool, thanks." He didn't know that was a crazy thing to ask at the time 15-year-old kid.
Yeah.
To do. So I just started arranging like. There's a whole, of course, if you could imagine, like songbook associated with the SGI, these Japanese songs. So I'd take them and make them jazz tunes and whatnot. But at some point, I was in charge of the band, and there was several times on Friday nights and Saturdays I would just write music for the band because we had to have something to play.
So you're like, these are all handwritten charts?
Yeah, totally.
And you were working from a score? Would you like write it down on a score or just write the like?
God, that's a great question. I would like figure stuff out on the piano. It was never original music. It was either arrangements of other songs. So I might have. Let's say there's a song called Forever Sensei, which is in that canon of Buddhist songs. I'd have the chart with the chords on it. I knew how to play the chords. I knew how to play the melody. I'd be like, okay, the trumpet's going to do this. And okay, in the B-flat chord, there's a D in it, so this guy will hold the D. Like, I just, you just work it out.
Yeah.
So I guess, I worked from a score. Or we had a bunch of piano books, so I would just grab, like, a random, like, I don't know, what's it called? What's that song called? The Running Movie?
The Running Movie? Oh man,
I just love that song. But I arranged that.
Ba 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 ba.
Yeah. Chariots of Fire.
Yeah.
Chariots of Fire. I love that song. I love the little boom 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 boom. So I'd be like, okay, saxophones go boom boom. But I'd write it all out.
Yeah.
I just write charts. And God knows, like, I'm sure there was like bars that were off. I mean, I didn't know anything. But I had a bunch of staff paper.
Yeah.
I didn't even get it. I'm sure my parents got it for me.
Hardware store.
That's probably it. They probably got it from high school pharmacy, man. So that's even where I started arranging music, was through the SGI band. And then it was like, I was like in charge of the band. And it just changed everything, man. It was like the whole trajectory was different. I was like a band leader at 16 every Sunday. It's like every Sunday you had to be there with music, organized, and rehearse. Because he was gone. Harry left, man. There was no one else. It was crazy. It was
Did he leave the church? Was it like a thing, or was
No, he had to move down to California. I think his dad got sick. I don't remember all the specifics. But yeah, that was a big part of my experience. And the same thing with the jazz band. A guy named Dave Bodderin was teaching the jazz band. And we
at your high school?
No, at the SGI.
Okay.
And he would just have like a... this was when I was in middle school. He'd have like a Watermelon Man chart. And like the scale was on it. It was like probably the Ebersol.
Yeah.
And he would be the same way. He's like, Dad, just improvise. And nothing like, oh, this is weird. We're going to start soloing now. He's like, just play.
Yeah.
Those are the notes. You'll be fine. And so I learned to play just like aggressively, so that when I did get to high school and try out for the jazz band, they'd be like, time to solo. And everyone's like, because that's the scariest part.
Yeah.
I was just like, and at the time, my band director was like, yeah, all right, cool, you're in. So I was like considered a good saxophone. I was considered a good musician because I could read music from piano, and I played without a care in the world.
Yeah.
Loud awesome. And wrong, strong and wrong.
Stronger, yes.
But then another fortunate thing is my high school band director, his name is Greg McKelvey, who's still around at Battleground High School. He would drive from like South Portland, 45 minutes to an hour every day, each way. And he just kicked ass, man.
Wow.
He was this like 7-foot tall black guy from Portland who would drive to the boondocks, to drive to Battleground, and he just rehearsed our asses off, man.
Huh.
Afternoon rehearsals. He was fiery back in the day, but he's since mellowed out.
Yeah.
But he still was intense. Big, tall guy.
Well,
spittle. Like,
was it Washington is like that's a big band, like that's a thing up there, right? Like they have the
that's Seattle.
So that's just Seattle.
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Maybe some suburbs around there.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Seattle jazz band booster is intense. It's like Texas football. Like, do not fuck around in Seattle. And there's some like ridiculous talent.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the who's of current, like Jim Black came out of that system.
Yeah.
Chris Speed, all these names.
So
Corfu.
when because that was something I was just thinking about, because you're like a multi-instrumentalist. Like what are all the instruments you play? Like you play bass. Like were these all were a lot of these things instruments that you started learning out of necessity? Like bass.
It is interesting because when you're a band leader, you have to fill roles.
Yeah.
So if my bass player didn't show up for the brass band in the SGI, like I played bass that day, or I played drums that day, or I played no other real wind instruments. I didn't play any clarinet or flute.
Yeah.
Until college. But I started on piano, so that came quick. We had a guitar around the house, so at some point my parents gave me guitar lessons as well.
Yeah.
He happened to play banjo, and at some point my dad was like, "Okay, son, we're going to keep paying for lessons, but you have to learn how to play banjo."
Really?
Yeah, it was like a caveat. It was like, you got to learn how to play banjo. And so I was like, okay, and my guitar teacher played banjo, so we got like a little pawn shop banjo.
Really?
Yeah, this Samick. I still have it. It's like a $60 banjo at the pawn shop. I got
Was
most
it like
of my
5-string
instruments.
banjo with the high?
Yeah, 5-string.
Was it high G, right?
High G, exactly. And so then I started
So
learning
you can do
banjo.
like rolls and shit?
I can play my way into shape. Yeah, I can. I'm a good campfire banjoist at this point. I can get around. I know my chords. I play enough to people who are like, "Hey, you play banjo," but then that's it. If someone actually practices banjo, they'll smoke me. Reckless abandon. I can play the banjo with reckless abandon. So guitar was like taking lessons. I really wanted to learn guitar for the exact reason that you spelled out a while ago. It's like it was the cool thing to do.
The cool thing.
Saxophone, bass came. I just wanted to play bass so bad.
Yeah.
The same thing. My parents took me to the pawn shop. We got like a under $100 Samick bass, Samick banjo, Samick bass. It's like this. I should be sponsored by.
Yeah, right.
Actually, that bass is now with Rory. Rory got that bass off me.
Really?
Yeah. So he has it in Vancouver.
Was he just practicing it?
He really wanted to learn bass when he's living in LA. So I was like, yeah, you can have my old bass.
Yeah, you know why? Because every piano player is like, man, I could be doing gigs if I knew how to play bass. I know exactly why he wanted the bass. It's like, who's doing gigs? Bass players are doing gigs.
This is what I call bass player. They have a gig.
Yeah.
And the other beautiful thing about learning bass is when I started playing bass, you then understand the band from that chair.
Yeah, that's another thing. Just you could hear it from the bottom up.
Totally. And what I later learned, when I got to Cal Arts, I did the transcription ear training class. I was the TA for both years that I was at Cal Arts, David Roydson's class. And it was a weird class because kids would just come in with their iPod or their CD and they would just play you what they had been working on for class, and then you just had to be like, look at the paper and be like, yes or no.
Yeah.
Which was amazing training. It was a really great experience. But what I eventually learned over time, it took me a while to figure this out. Bass players would come in, they actually had a hard time hearing melodies. I was like, what? Like, it's a melody, it's fine. But then there was 2 soprano vocalists in my section.
Yeah, I was in the class when you did it one year, but I was
my second year. That's right. You were with Dave.
Yeah,
right?
I was with Dave.
Yeah, that's right. But then I remember these 2 soprano vocalists. This is my first year. I remember I had Morgan Finch. That second year I had Morgan Finch. Finch or Fitch? Finch.
Yeah, Tim Carr was in that class.
Tim Carr. Was he in mine?
He was in I was in that class with him.
Well, I can't remember.
Oh, he might
have. Dave.
Yeah, and Nathan Phelps was in the class.
Nathan Phelps might have been on my side, but I remember Morgan Finch because he was like stupid talented.
Yeah,
18-year-old, 17 maybe. Like he came in just like, holy shit, chops. In the
I remember him just being in that class for a couple of weeks and just being not happy about it because he's just like taking a class about this. Like,
I know, it was good.
You know,
he was great, man. I still have so much respect for that guy. He had huge ears. Like instantly at 18, I was like, motherfucker.
Yeah.
And I think I could help him out on a couple things, but for the most part, I'd just be like, see you, Morgan. Nice work. But the rascal was, who's that guitar player with the dreadlocks who got really into Gamelan?
Oh, Danny?
No.
Oh, Tyler.
Tyler, dude. Tyler would come in with like a Swedish game show theme. It was like a bar of 11/8, a bar of 16.5 over 12. I mean, it was like stupid, this crazy thing, perfectly notated. Mm-hmm. I still remember this. He said there was some game show, a talk show that was hosted by a vibraphonist.
Yeah.
And he like plays like this insane theme song. It's like 45 seconds long, and it'd be like if Meshuggah or Dillinger's Escape Plan played like marimba jazz. It was nuts, and he brought this shit in. I'm like, great work, Tyler.
Yeah, that kid was...
What am I gonna say?
Yeah.
Go get a bagel and some coffee with your time that you're
Give me
supposed
one
to
second. I just want to close this door.
The bass, just to finish this thought, what I eventually learned is that soprano vocalists, like, and during the bass assignment, because one of them was go transcribe a bass line, they just couldn't hear it. It was just like thump, thump, thump to them. And no offense to them, that's not what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
When I can't remember how I came across this, but I didn't know about the cochlea yet, which is the membrane inside of your ear that deciphers frequencies. And it's like a little snail shape.
Huh.
And if you stretch it out, like one end of it listens to... Do you know the human hearing range by any chance?
The actual numbers?
Yeah.
No.
Me neither. Let's just say 40 hertz to 20,000. It's stupid.
Yeah, it's like probably an octave below the piano.
Yeah.
To like, you know, like an octave, like probably an octave and a half both ways off the piano.
20,000 is too high. 5,000. Let's just say 10,000. Let's say 40 to 10,000.
40 to 10,000.
For the hell of it. So one side would be 40 hertz, and then as you go up, it goes up in frequency all the way to 10,000. So there's physical hairs on this thing, on this membrane inside your ear, that get excited. So when you play 75 hertz, the little 75 hertz hairs, like they kind of wiggle.
Yeah.
And that sensation,
the air.
The sensation of the wiggling is actually what leads to the brain to perceiving 70 hertz. So if you could imagine a vocalist has been listening to treble clef, you know, whatever that range is, you know, 1,000 to 4,000 hertz their whole life, just deciphering between that band. They don't have any practice in the low end. They've just never had to. I mean, maybe some teachers would be like, this is the bass motion and whatnot, and that's why that's so important.
Yeah.
To give a young ear, a young membrane, right?
A young membrane.
A young cochlea.
A young cochlea.
By the way, whenever you try and explain this to middle schoolers, you say cochlea. You just do, because it's just when you can't get by saying cochlea. I've tried. It doesn't work. They're going to catch it.
Yeah, then the class is over.
Did you just say it? But if you say cochlea, they're like, okay. And just let them figure it out
like
on their own.
C-O-C-K?
C-O-C-H-L-E-A. C-O-C-K.
Or you should say cochlea.
Fucking German.
Yeah.
Cochlea.
Cochlea.
Exactly. Sometimes, you have to be like, the cochlea is membrane. You would say membrane, which is too... If you got hip middle schoolers, you don't stand a chance. All that being said, so it occurred to me like, oh wow, like actually practicing the bass gives you that experience.
Yeah.
And when I learned upright bass, it was for my University of Washington's jazz choir, because no bass player at the school wanted to play in that band because it was a bad jazz choir.
Yeah.
It wasn't very good. Maybe it is now.
Yeah.
I don't want to diss on Pac-10 jazz choirs, but the UW jazz choir from the time that I was there wasn't very solid.
Yeah.
So no bass player that actually studied bass like, I don't want to play there. So they gave it to me, and I'd already known electric, so I was like, fuck yeah. So I just played upright in that band. And I learned that, too, that those vocalists couldn't really tell what I was doing. Yeah. Which is a good thing for an upstart upright bass player, because the hardest thing is stamina. Yeah. So if you're halfway through a 2-hour rehearsal, and you're fucked, like you can't feel your forearms, you can just stretch. Yeah. And no one will care. Or you can just play open strings, just because they're just hearing thump, 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 thump. Like they don't have that 40 to 100 hertz to develop, right? So I learned that then, but I didn't really know what I was doing. And then when I got in the transcription class, it was like an experiment and all these different musicians coming in. And frankly, percussionists would come in, and they just had trouble deciphering melody.
Yeah.
Because they never had to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's tough, man. I had a few percussionists come in, and they were like, oh, this is really hard.
Yeah.
Like when it got to like 4-part.
Mm-hmm.
What you guys had to do?
The Wayne Shorter stuff.
The Wayne Shorter stuff. But I was thinking more the Oliver.
Oh, the Oliver Nelson.
Oliver Nelson stuff, man. Some tricky stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And a percussionist going in there in the same way that if you put a trumpet player in an Indian percussion tala class and be like, I transcribed this rhythm. They'd be like, what? No, I won't. But playing bass gives you that experience. Gives you that. It gives you that cochlea. Strengthens your cochlea.
That's interesting. You're making me want to play bass more now.
You should do, man.
Because I could just hook it up to my keyboard amp there.
Totally. You would love it. If you play guitar, you're already there.
Yeah, well, you know what I used to do in high school? Because, I did want to... Like, I used to... Remember Guitar Pro? Do you remember that program? It was like it was a computer program that you could... It would do MIDI interpretations of tab charts. So people would like... I unfortunately was not guided in the direction of just listening. I was guided when I took guitar lessons, the guy would be like, "Hey, I want to learn this lick. What is it? The Jimmy Page lick on a Joe Cocker's.
Sure.
Like, wow, wow, wow. You're like, I want to learn that. He's like, okay. He transcribes it and he says, you do this. Which is like, that's the shittiest way to teach somebody. You don't teach them by be like, let me do the work for you and then give you the result.
Really good point.
So I spent so much time
reading tabs
and just like I would search for this is ridiculous. I would search for hours for the tab of something, right? I could have spent those hours trying to figure something out.
Wow.
That's
beautiful, Phil. Yeah.
So it's like, my
God.
So
the same way that a kid would put way more work into cheating on a test than just fucking learning this shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No offense, but yeah,
it's exactly what I was doing. And it's that's been a hard thing.
But no one told you.
Nobody told me.
Just go listen to the thing and figure it out. Damn.
Yeah.
Like it was nothing.
Because I was the opposite. You did it, and everybody was like, "Okay, good, go do it again." And then I was like, "This is impossible to do."
Yeah.
I heard this thing saying you can't do this, and you just heard everybody can do it.
No one even cared about it.
Yeah.
It wasn't even good job.
Oh my gosh, just because they didn't care.
They didn't know attaboys.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. Randy Gloss, when I taught with him at CAPSA, which is the summer program, he was so adamant. His whole concept, his whole teaching philosophy centered around don't tell them it's hard. And you'd have high school kids, and he would bring in Mazursky, pictures at an exhibition, and he'd be like, "Here you go, figure it out." There'd be guitar players like, "I only read tabs," or "Do it." We had this kid named Hector. What was his last name? This is amazing. It's a beautiful kid. He's in college now. Is he at Northridge? He played piano and he's blind from birth. Same thing.
Huh.
We'd be playing Frank Zappa.
Yeah.
And we'd be like, "Okay, Hector, figure it out." But not it was just the best way.
Yeah.
And they would finish the 3 weeks through Randy's just adamant philosophy that you just throw the kid in the ocean, they're gonna swim.
Yeah.
And we would be playing this crazy stuff, and Derek Spiva would be conducting, and they'd just be looking at him, and just he's such an amazing conductor. And leader. Do you know Derek?
I know Derek from the African stuff.
Exactly. He's such a great conductor, and he knows all the music so well, and he's so energetic, and he just brings people along. But they wouldn't even realize that they're playing 30-second notes, or these crazy Frank Zappa rhythms, or some South Indian thing. But that whole concept of you don't put the wall there, then the kid never has to break through any walls. Right? That's his whole philosophy. And it changed my mind about stuff.
So you're in high school, and then you're leading the band. You're playing in the school band.
Yeah, the big band at school.
And then when you went to college, where you're was it where you said in your mind I'm going to be a musician?
That's it. It's the same thing as high school. It was never a choice.
Yeah.
I remember I auditioned. In fact, I actually checked out Cal Arts when I was an incoming freshman. When I was a senior, I should say. And I came home with a tape of their classical department of new composition.
You flew down here to check it out?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Came down to L.A. My sister was living here at the time, so we must have been visiting her.
Yeah.
Because she was going to USC, that's right.
You meet with Reitzing?
I did not. I met with, what is his name? He's a saxophone player. He now lives in Seattle or Portland. Fuck. He was the harmony at the time.
Oh, okay.
He was the music advisor guy. He's a great saxophone player. What is his name? Fuck me.
That was like 2002?
2001.
Yeah, 2001.
So 2000.
Yeah, because I think, what year did you graduate high school?
2001.
Oh, yeah, so we're the same age.
There you go. Class of 01.
Yeah, man.
I visit CalArts, and he gave me some CalArts CDs just to check out. And they were like amazing, but it was also like weird shit. I couldn't really get my mind around all of it, but I loved it. I listened to it a lot. But he even suggested, he was like, he went to University of Oregon first, and then he came to CalArts. He says, this for jazz is a better grad program than it is an undergrad program. If you come here, because then he explained the whole thing about age. Most of their undergrads, it's an average age of whatever, 23 or whatever that number is, and the average graduate age is more like 25 to 27. He said, this is a really good school for people that know what they want, but it's not a great school for learning your fundamentals.
Yeah.
So he said, he suggested his path, which was go to your state school and then come here as a grad.
Wow.
I remember that vividly. Like, it was a really interesting conversation to me. And he was also really candid about the drugs and the alcohol in a realistic way.
Yeah.
Not like drugs are bad and alcohol is bad. He
Yeah.
was like, there's a lot of it here, and I've seen many 18 to 20-year-old get lost in it.
Yeah.
He's like, it's not for the young. This is not a good school
Wow.
for the young. Genius, right?
Yeah.
Like telling an 18-year-old kid like what's actually happening.
I wonder if I just wonder like if anything had to do with jazz, I wonder if Reitzing was like, yeah, we should just probably tell these kids.
I wonder. He might have. Because it's a brilliant suggestion.
Yeah.
In fact, when I meet kids that are thinking of going to CalArts at 18, I'm like, well,
Yeah.
not the best idea,
Yeah.
actually. Like, go find out how to hear a minor third first.
Yeah, and like don't start off at $50,000 in the hole.
I mean,
your
son
first
of a
year in
bitch.
school.
Son of a bitch. and also, like, the whole concept of CalArts of everything being okay is really good for someone that's done a lot of things. But I wonder how good it is for an 18-year-old kid. Like, I've seen CalArts give people illusions of grandeur. Because you can go in there and do anything, and it'll be celebrated.
Yeah.
And 100 people will be at your recital.
Yeah.
And you go out in the real world and you're like, I'm important. And then you just get killed.
Yeah.
It's fucking shitty out here. It's super shitty. 100 people are not showing up to your gig.
Yeah.
Because they just ate black beans and rice at the cafeteria. Or they took mushrooms earlier that night, like a rat experience. Like, that's not happening in fucking little Tokyo. It's not happening in the valley, for God's sakes. It's different.
Alright, I hope you enjoyed this interview thus far. As I said, it was the first of 2 parts. In the next episode, we'll be getting into John's current music a lot more. Speaking of John's current music, right now we're listening to Fool of Me, featuring John on tenor sax. It is the second track off his latest big band album, called Farewell. Well, it's his latest and it's his first. The group's the John Armstrong Jazz Orchestra. The album is out on Orenda Records, which is a new label out of Los Angeles run by Daniel Rosenboom. They are putting out so much really great creative music. I highly encourage you to check out all of their releases, which you can get at orendarecords.com. Orenda is Orenda. Also, please be sure to check out John with Slumgum. They're playing at the Blue Whale on Thursday, September 25th at 8 p.m. Part of the Angel City Jazz Festival. They'll be sharing the bill with Montana Roberts, another really gifted saxophone player, and I highly encourage you to check that show out. In fact, go to angelcityjazz.com to check out the entire lineup of the festival, which is going on from the 19th to the 28th of September. This annual festival is, I feel, the crown jewel in the LA jazz scene. Rocco Sumonti started it back in 2008, and every year is something I look forward to very much. I am also really excited that the main event of this festival on September 28th will be held at the Barnsdall Art Park this year. It was held there in the first year of the festival, and it was just a really magical experience. There was something about seeing all this great music, and there was just a real sense of community there. And the Barnsdall Art Park, if you've never been there, is a house that was a house designed by the architect Frank Lloyd Wright, and is now a community arts center, and also has a theater, and has an outdoor area. Well, I believe they'll have an outdoor stage this year, so it's worth it to go there on many levels. You can ride your bike there. They're going to have a bike valet this year. It's really close to the Vermont and Hollywood Boulevard the red car stop. So you could take the train, take your bike. You could walk if you, live in Thai-town, which I don't, but I could easily bike there. So I'm probably not going to do that. But I could if I wanted to. Anyways, so go to the festival, angelcityjazz.com for all the details. Also, by the way, if you were interested, the first track you heard on the episode today was Honcho Poncho from Slumgum's album Cordboard Flavored Fiber. I remember hearing them perform this track, and my good friend Argenta had pointed out to me that it was during the moment where John switches to all these kind of crazy multiphonic melodies he starts playing. She goes, John really is kind of the definition of a barrel-chested saxophone player. So just thought I'd throw that in there. Also, in case any of you were wondering, what was the Celestial Sounds album Phil was talking about? It was actually called Pure Moods, which was one of those incredible compilation albums you could order only over the phone back in the 90s, one of those call now kind of things. So I posted the commercial for the album on my Tumblr page. You should definitely get a kick out of it. It is hilarious. It's hilarious. Please check it out. The Tumblr page is spiltmilkpod.tumblr.com. Spilt, Spilt, milk, not spilled milk, spilt. Anyways, and then when I went to search for the album on Spotify, the first track that popped up was this incredible version of the theme for Chariots of Fire, which was on a huge Pure Moods compilation. It doesn't matter. So I figured since John loves this song so much, it would be a perfect way to send us out. So make sure to like us on Facebook at facebook.com/SpiltMilkPod. And that's it. Thanks for listening to Spilt Milk. I am Philip Rankin. See you next time.